So, our next speaker up on the stage, you'll be relieved to hear, Maryam, is an experienced storyteller. So she's going to come and tell us a story. And the title of her story is The Joys of Managing Engineering Teams. So yes, this is probably, what, a 3-minute talk, and there'll be a whole bunch of questions at the end. Welcome her to the stage, please. Applaud.
Hello. There we go. Brilliant. How's everyone doing? It's nice to be in person again, right? Just a little story before I actually talk about the story. I first came to Craft in 2016 as an attendee, and I said to myself, I'm going to speak on this stage one day because it's such an amazing conference. And here I am today, so never lose hope and never give up on what you want to do. So thank you so much to the organizers. I really need to thank them for organizing this in the uncertain times we still are in. And I'm really hoping all of you are enjoying this and taking in all the adrenaline that we have here. Right, the joys of managing engineering teams. This is a really interesting thing that I've come across in my career. My name is Maryam Umar. I work as head of quality assurance at an organization in London called Rezolve Limited. We are an instant salesware platform. A little bit about me. I have been in the world of quality assurance for about 16 years now. I started out as a hands-on tester and very quickly shifted into automation testing because I felt that exploratory testing is what I should use my brains for, and automation is what I should use for doing repetitive tasks. So I went into lots of different organizations and, again, very quickly realized I like to work on products where I myself am a customer. So I moved to OpenTable, which is a restaurant booking website. I then worked for Expedia and Hotels.com. So really swiftly started learning a lot in the field because I was a customer myself. But then what I realized after about 10 years that I wasn't getting the help I needed to move forward in my career. Whenever I would go to my tech leads, who were my managers, I used to work in cross-functional teams, they would turn around and, when I would ask them about, okay, what's the next challenge I can look forward to? And they would say, why don't you write more code? You can become a developer, or you could become a scrum master. Have you thought about product analysts' roles? And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to stay in the area of quality assurance. And I really felt that I wasn't getting the guidance I wanted to become, to go where I wanted to go in my career. So I said, you know what? I'll try and help my folk. And I chose to become a manager. A lot of people may go, why would you do that? When I left my organization at the time, I asked my two managers. One was my tech lead, and I asked him, I was like, what advice do you have for a first-time manager? And he said, Maryam, it's not for everyone. I am a tech lead, but I prefer writing code. It's not for me. So go into it thinking that you may do a year of this and realize, I'm stepping back. I was like, OK, that's not encouraging. Then I asked the director of that department, and I said, what advice would you have for me? And he said, Maryam, sometimes you have to let your teams make mistakes, but make them in a controlled manner because that's how they will learn. I was like, OK. Don't really have any advice other than that. 6 years on, I am heading departments now. It is an intense role. How many managers in the house today? There we go. It is an intense role. I kid you not. There are days when you feel extremely spent mentally. You feel like, all I've done today is attend meetings. What have I actually delivered today? What have I added value to today? But the other side is, it's extremely rewarding when you see your team succeed. You feel like a proud parent. You're like, I enabled them to do that. They've done it. What I've learned in the 6 years I've been doing this is that leading is completely different to being an individual contributor. When you're an individual contributor, it's very black and white. But when you're leading, you go into this gray area where you realize that you are not at the forefront of delivery. You are enabling people to deliver. So you kind of take a back seat and you say, okay, I am not going to boast about the work I am doing. I will let my team talk for itself. So you kind of stay back in the trenches and you become the person who's unblocking them. And what you also realize is that your value as a leader is being measured through your team. As we all know, quality assurance, a lot of people, and I hate to say this, still have this notion of, oh, we just find bugs in code. But for the seasoned people in the audience, which I'm sure all of you are, it is a lot more than just finding defects. I remember once one of my managers said to me, why do we have so many defects in production? Or why do we have so many defects that we're finding after the end of the sprint? What's going on? But that's where my team was adding value, because we were actually finding defects internally rather than reporting incidents. Defects are a good thing. So that's how I actually tried to phrase it to management and to my team. What I really wish I knew when I started doing management, I need to make time for all of these things and a few others as well. I need to make time for building people. I need to make time for building a strategy. I need to make time to learn. I need to make sure I'm always available. I need to make time for myself. And it's just too much. It literally is 1,000 tabs open in one time. So today I want to share a few stories of some of the mistakes I made, and hopefully you won't make them as well. People management is something we all are really worried or scared about. I'm personally the type of person that feels that I have this responsibility for this person that I'm working with. I don't want to do wrong to them. I once had a person in my team, and she wanted extreme flexible hours. What she wanted was to shift her hours from 9 to 5 to 7:30 to 2:30. And I said, how is this going to work? Why do you need this? Oh, because I need to help my child go through an examination, and I need to help them prepare. And it's like, okay, we need to find a way to work through this, because I'm very much results-oriented and not you need to do so many hours in the office. And she was a performing person in the team. She was delivering the features that we were signing up for the sprints. Everything was on time. Not a lot of incidents were being found in that area. So I really didn't have reason to say, no, you can't do this. But of course, as a manager, you need to think about how the business is running. You want to make sure your team is highly available, et cetera. So I actually went around quite a lot, and I said, okay, I'll try and get some approval sorted for you. Went around and did that. About a month or so in, her Scrum Master came to me, and he said to me, Maryam, so-and-so, we're just not delivering features. What's going on? We're just getting blocked on signing off. And I was like, but this person should be available. They said they are still doing the hours we discussed. It's like, what hours did she tell you? It's like 7:30 to 2:30. And he's like, I'm here at 8:30 every morning. She's hardly here. That's a breach of trust. I trusted that person to do the hours we discussed, and they weren't doing it. I had to have a very difficult conversation with them. The conversation was, we agreed to do this. Your team is now suffering. You're not being a proper team member. What do you think about this? Let them come up with a solution. And she's like, well, I have this. I have a lot of priorities, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, you've broken my trust. I trusted you. We made an agreement, and you didn't adhere to it. She then said, and that's when I started getting a little bit annoyed. This was also my first managerial role. And I think I overstepped the line a little bit. I actually said to them, your child's exam is not, you are the only one who's responsible for it. Your partner is as well, so you guys need to figure this out at home. Don't bring this into work. Fortunately, she realized that she was not being honest to her team, and she resigned. And it was very amicable. That was a time when I did not document this process that we had agreed to timing-wise. However, this was the okay story. However, there was another story. Performance review time, there was a person in my team, senior engineer, and they were saying that, oh, I want a pay rise, I want to make sure I get promoted. I said, yes, you're a senior engineer in the team, but I don't see you mentoring anyone, and it should be a key part of your role, so let's try and work on that, and when you achieve that goal, we can look into getting you promoted. Okay, fine. What I noticed was that other people in the team were not approaching this person because they were quite abrasive in their communication styles. So we were quite lucky that in the organization we had quite a lot of training in-house that this person could benefit from. So I assigned those courses to them in our learning and development system. And I would keep asking, have you done it? Have you done it? No, I haven't found the time. We were doing this pull request, that pull request, whatever. Come review time, of course, they did not get a pay rise. All they got was a bonus. They were very upset. As a manager, I really want people to understand, delivering this message of, I'm sorry, we're not happy with the progress you've made in the past year, this means you're not going to get a pay rise, and these are the things you can work on, it's a very difficult message to give because you don't know how that person's going to react. And this person was, I don't agree with this, got up and left the room. It's fine. Sometimes you have to let people absorb that information. I was like, okay, we'll discuss this tomorrow. Tomorrow, the next day, when they came into the office, I said, hey, morning, how are you? What time can we catch up? Did not even acknowledge a good morning. It's like, okay, they're still upset, leave them to it. I spoke to my manager, and they said, just give them a couple of days. Couple of days turned into a couple of weeks. They started declining all team meetings. They were still in the office, and I was like, this is not right. This is not how you behave in the workplace. And I actually caught them by surprise. I said, do you have a couple of minutes? Rather than scheduling something in the calendar, we went into a meeting room, and they got really aggressive. Really aggressive. And for a minute, I had to stop the conversation, and I had to say, I'm sorry, can you please watch your tone? And that's not how you want to communicate with your team. And then they got up and left the room, and I emailed HR, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward, 7 months later, this saga is still continuing. Them not talking to people, them denying any improvement that they need to do for their career. 7 months later, they're still fighting for a performance review where it's time to set up the next performance review. The mistake I made was I did not document in an email that these are the things you need to work on. Can you please acknowledge? So, lesson learned. Especially when you're giving constructive feedback to your team, always document and make sure they respond to it so you have a paper trail of what's going on. One thing I made the mistake of, again, was I looked into people progression only, because that's really the problem I came with. I remember I was trying to move forward in my career. I wasn't getting the direction I needed. So immediately when I became a manager, I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'll make sure everybody has really good objectives that they need to achieve and just work on it. And I completely forgot that I need to work on a team strategy, because I didn't have any mentorship at that time or anyone explaining to me, this is how you need to formulate in your head how to run a team. So all I was doing was looking into people progression only and promoting, and that way the strategy got left behind. And I only got a wake-up call when at the end of the year I was like, what have I achieved? So be mindful of this, that you're not only looking into people progression. Performance reviews are hard. You cannot measure performance based on the number of commits someone has done, the number of comments they have done, the number of frameworks they have created, the number of defects they have found, the number of Confluence pages they have written. All of this is black and white, but performance reviews are gray. How do you actually do performance reviews? One thing I remember, and I still do today, is make sure you have regular one-to-ones. I know we all get really busy, Make sure you schedule them once a fortnight. Make time for people. And then when you go into those meetings, ask them to tell you what they want from their career. Of course, you have some aspirations for them, but it's a platform for them to talk to you. And that's how you can start conversations about what you want to put in their goals and so on. I saw this diagram on Twitter, actually. It was by a product manager, which I found really useful when trying to talk about how do you know how your team is performing. If you think about this, you can pick up a job description for a role of the person you're managing, and you can say, OK, how do you think you're doing in each of these areas? So let's say somebody could be really good at making sure they are educating people on better design principles. But educating people for design practices may not be enough. They also need to document the principles we're trying to adopt. So that's where you could steer the conversation towards influencing, mentoring. I understand that managing managers is probably a bit easier than managing engineers, especially when they're becoming really senior, because you start thinking, OK, what's their role beyond architecting our system? How can they actually provide value to the team and the organization? So that's where it can be a two-way conversation between you and the person. And you can really use a diagram like this to figure out where they're lacking and make sure you're working on it. 1.5 years, 2 years in, I learned that creating a team vision is very important. But creating a team vision is hard when the organization doesn't have a vision. I once worked in an organization where I said, OK, I'll create a team vision, and the team vision was more around, let's make sure we can provide great quality products along with monitoring existing products in production. But if the team vision does not align with the organization's vision, you can't really ask your team to move with the organization. It's really important to understand what the organization's goal is so you can create goals for your team. If I take the example of my current organization, we actually develop an SDK which allows merchants to buy products using their applications on their phones. So not only do we have an SDK, we also have iOS and Android apps. And we have teams which span across it. Then I understand as a team, writing test automation for iOS and Android apps may not be the highest of our priorities compared to making sure we are doing really good integration testing with our APIs. So if you understand things like that, it really helps you create things so that a team knows what you're going to try and tackle. When you're creating a team vision, don't make the mistake of creating it yourself. It's not a top-down or a bottom-up approach. It's really a collaborative idea. You need to sit together and really understand that what is it that we're trying to solve, what do we want to do as a team, what are the skills we have in the team, etc. And once you're trying to work on it, you want to work on it together. Because if the team feels like they are not bought into creating the vision, they will not help you implement it. And if they don't help you implement it, your team doesn't succeed, and then you don't succeed, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a ripple effect. So make sure they are engaged. You can always guide your team in figuring out what the vision can be. You can put ideas in their minds, but you can try and give them some homework, because then they actually feel some sense of autonomy, which is really important for all of us. It's part of our ego, I think, as Rebecca was just talking about it, that we want to make sure that we feel that we're adding value in some way to the organization. Creating a vision is really easy. How do you implement it? How many of you have seen a strategy in a conference page which has not been updated for a few months? There we go. Implementing a vision is really hard, really hard. I am not going to kid you about it, because let's say we have a vision of we want to deploy to production 200 times a day. Very tangible vision for the team. And how do we get around it? Yeah, you need to build this, you need to build that, we need to make sure we have the right tooling, we are in the cloud, we're deploying here with packaging, blah, 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 all of that. How are you documenting this? It's all in people's head. And I really came up with this I really found it difficult to figure out how am I going to visualize this, because at the end of the day, I'm working for a business, and a business wants to see a progress for the vision and strategy I've created. And how do I inculcate that in the team's objectives? Another thing before I go into how to implementing a vision, transparency, again, as Rebecca was saying. It's extremely important to be transparent with your team, especially as a mid-level manager. Sometimes as a team, you may agree, right, we want to make sure we have the right people allocated to the team. I remember one time we had as a team agreed that we'll have 20 people. I said, right, these are the skill sets we need, this is what we want. I'll make a proposal and I'll get budget approval. When I went to speak to the C-suite, they said, yeah, that's all well and good, but we want you to be more efficient, so we're only going to give you a budget of 12 people. It's a very common problem, right? What do I do now? I don't have the skill set now. What do I do? Do I tell the team? Do I not tell the team? We're going through this mental tug-of-war. Actually went back and told the team that this is what the management is saying, and not because they don't trust us with our planning, but more because they want us to think about more efficient ways of working together. So let's try and deprioritize something. So you want to be honest with them, but you also don't want to present this as a problem that, oh my God, they don't understand what I'm trying to say, and they never understand. You are the voice of management to your team, and you are the team's voice to the management. So make sure you're really phrasing these problems in a positive way, and then you can have mentors, or you can speak to your line manager directly and voice your stress and concern about some decisions. So coming back to how you can implement a vision, there is something I read about in a management training course called the MOST framework. The MOST framework talks about using mission, objectives, strategies, and tactics. What you can really do is map out your entire mission into objectives in terms of what do we actually need to deliver the mission, and then strategies on how we will achieve those objectives, and tactics. So my team's mission was, I'll take a couple of examples here, that we want to make sure that we have the right, we are providing quality assurance for all of our releases. Let's say that's a mission. The objective could be, okay, we want to make sure that we can actually, I'm just trying to think on my feet here. The objective could be that release quality assurance, okay, we need to make sure that we understand the scope of the release. We want to make sure we understand what are the teams involved, if there's a timeline, and so on. The strategy could be, once we know the scope of the release, you want to make sure we are documenting a test plan, we're making sure we're sharing it. How do you document a test plan? Okay, these are the tools we could use. We could use X-Ranger, or we could use Zephyr, or do we want to automate the test cases? And all those tactics could be smaller items. Another one we could think of is, let's say we want to do automated quality gates. Automated quality gates in our pipelines. Okay, we want a pipeline which can actually support this. How do we support this? We want to make sure our tests can run quickly, the feedback is faster, so we can deploy quickly, and that can be a strategy. And how can you deploy quickly? Could be a tool you're talking about, which could be your tactic, and so on. You can actually articulate this on a Jira board, which is what I use, which is what I do. Your mission could be like your sprint goal, or your Kanban goal, or whatever you want to call it. And the objectives could be features, strategies can be stories, and strategies can be epics, and tactics can be stories. And you can assign those epics to people in your team. So you can actually try and create a roadmap of not only your entire strategy, but also see the progress. And then as a team, especially when you're running departments, I'm not talking about engineering teams, I'm talking about, say, DevOps team. I hate calling it a DevOps team, but the word is not coming to my head because DevOps is a methodology. We could have a QA team, you could have a project management team, and so on. And how do they actually work together on creating these strategies and making sure they actually deliver on time? These strategies can actually go into people's performance reviews as well, and you can talk about how long it took to develop, what were the blockers, and so on, because you actually have data then to show something which is great as black and white. So the MOST framework really, really helps articulate missions in that way. Building a team is a really hard thing as a manager. Sometimes we are in the amazing, amazing situation that you are the first person who's a manager and you're like, go ahead, this is the budget, go and hire so-and-so. Most often, we're given teams we haven't hired. Show of hands, who didn't like the team they got? You have to make do with that team. You have to make sure that they're delivering, and this is not the team of your choice. How do you work around it? The first thing is you need to focus on building the right thing. This is where the business objective becomes really important. If you understand what the business needs to deliver, it then becomes easier to understand, think about how we can deliver it. What are the toolings we need to put in place to make sure we're building the right thing? Another thing that's important to understand here is that sometimes we feel that, oh my God, I'm really busy, I'm really busy. Busyness is not a good thing. Busyness means you're not innovating, you're just following. You're just picking up a ticket, you're looking at the acceptance criteria, right, dish, bish, bash, bosh, done. That's all you're doing day in and day out. Where is the innovation coming in? How are you actually thinking differently when you're doing your day-to-day job, which in turn contributes to the business and to your career? And the last thing which I found really hard was, how do I think about the skill sets I need for the team? It's one thing to say, I want someone with Python experience or Cypress experience or someone who's used REST assured and so on. But it's another thing to think about what are the soft skills you need. Right now, my team is truly global. I have a person in China. I have 3 people in India. I have a few people in Bosnia. I have a few people in Poland. I have a few people in the UK. Completely different time zones. Completely different way of communicating. English is not the first language of most of the people. 80% of the team, English is not the first language. So when I'm interviewing someone, you're thinking about how will they communicate with that person in China who is, even though they're really good, they're not able to express their frustration, and they may be frustrating them. How will they do it when they're doing code reviews with someone in India? Will they be okay to start a little bit earlier sometimes? It's not an expectation. Another thing when you have a global team like that is really discuss what are the core working hours that we will all respond to. I know we've all been working remote for 2.5 years now. My job is completely remote right now. And I find it really hard then to figure out what are the times that I will actually stop working and what are the times that I will actually be available for my team. Prioritization is something I think I've usually been okay with in my life, but I found it really hard as a manager. As a manager, you have to, everybody's like, what are these meetings these managers attend all the time? 10 one-to-ones, few scrum ceremonies, roadmap planning, your own one-to-ones, working with the product team, trying to understand what product we're trying to deliver, being available for on-call when there's a production deployment, and there's just so many things. How do you know what is the first thing you need to do? I actually like to use this analogy. We all have life admin. We all need to get grocery, do the laundry, clean the house. We all manage it relatively okay. It's not like we're doing one thing at a time. So you need to figure out how you can balance your work in a similar way. What I also learned in the few management training courses is that I was awful at delegating. The tester in me loves to give attention to detail. So I was like, that test case is not designed right. Do I say this? Do I not say? You need to let go. You have to, what my manager said, you have to let people make mistakes sometimes so they learn. I remember once, we recently had this, you will be, this is part of true startup to scale up issues really on the ground. This company, this team has been around for quite a while, and they used to have this Uber spreadsheet of test cases they would run on production. And I was like, this is not, efficient. This is not, we cannot scale if this is what we're going to do. We need a way to visualize this. So we said, OK, we'll import everything into Jira, and we'll visualize the test cases. And as a way forward, we'll make sure that every feature has test cases attached to it. Very, very minute thing. We all agreed, the team agreed, yes, yes, we will do this. Behold, we have releases with no test cases. And I'm like, what is going on here? Yes, yes, we tested. I was like, you said you will write test cases. And that's where the conversation became jovial, but also firm, because people knew that was their priority, and that was something I had delegated them to. What, as a manager, I find really hard is finding time to think about what are we going to do next year. And it's June this year. What is it that the next problem we're going to solve? And often we don't have the time to do that innovation. And that's something which I'm still trying to figure out. I am so glad conferences are like this have started to happen, because even though they were happening virtually, you learn so much from the people you meet, and you see ideas, and you're like, OK, this is what I can think about. This is what I can actually implement and take back to my team. And that's what I want to do. But then you could also use this as a learning tool for them and help them progress. My career goal is to go into a 4-day work week. So the sooner I can do this, the easier it will be for me. So try and think about what are the things you want to prioritize which will make you achieve your career goals quicker. The last thing I want to share is vulnerability. As managers, I find we mostly work with introverts, some extroverts. And as managers, I find that sometimes people don't talk to each other, or they're not comfortable in a space, especially now when we are mostly onboarding people and Slack is the only means of communication. Some people don't like to switch on cameras. It's a very real problem that we have now. They don't want to switch on cameras because they don't like the background they have, or they have kids in the background, or my cats usually walk around me, and I'm like, this is me, this is who I am. Showing vulnerability is really important as a manager first, and then to your team. I actually shared with my team some of the challenges I have. I told them that I have a real problem with delegating, so you have to tell me off when I'm doing too much of your work. I actually said that to him. Because at the end of the day, I don't see the relationship as a person who is managing them. They are educated, experienced individuals in their team. They're adults. They can self-manage. They can deliver. It's more about how we collaborate, and I'm just the person who helps them deliver faster when they get roadblocks. So what is it that I can do to help steer them? This is an exercise which I usually run with my team. This exercise was recommended by Emily Weber about team psychological safety. What you do really is all these 9 squares, you can just create Post-its and put it on a board and ask everybody in your team to write it out. This is me. People make weird drawings about themselves. People write down, what do I need to work well? I need good air conditioning. I need a faster laptop. I need an extra screen which is so-and-so wide, or I need to make sure that I can deploy my code within 2 minutes. Whatever is it that you need. And then we all shared how we wanted to work together. What I learned as a part of this exercise was there's a person in my team who had been training as a boxer for 11 years. There's a person in my team who is the court jester, as we would call him, but he was extremely shy. There's a person in my team who had 4 names. And really interesting stuff, which then contributes to the banter of the team. And when there's banter, people become really comfortable about how they're talking to each other. What I also learned is I got some feedback indirectly as a part of running this exercise. And that feedback was more than half of my team are morning people. And I'm not a morning person. So I learned, OK, I need to switch a little bit. We'll make a compromise. We'll get together and do team retrospectives, maybe 10:30 in the morning every month or something like that. Most of the people liked direct feedback with some actual links of what was going wrong, rather than this happened a month ago and they can't take any action. They want immediate feedback. It really helped us collaborate in our manner together as individuals, as people. I always say my team is full of people. It's not resources. I like to call them people because they have an identity and they bring something to the table. So at the end, I just want to say that managing is fun, leading is better. When you start leading a team, you have to remember that in the beginning, you're really trying to form a team, think about the skill sets you need, and really trying to bring them together and understand the dynamics you're going to work with. And that's just the beginning. Your team starts norming a little bit when they understand, okay, this is the vision, this is how I can contribute, this is the value I'm going to add, and you want to make sure everybody has something tangible as part of your vision. And that's when you start seeing progress of your team. And when you actually see progress being made on that vision and that implementation, and people start learning new things every day, that really is when your team starts becoming successful. Thank you very much.
That was a longer story than a few minutes. Good job. Okay, we have time for a couple of questions. If I ask them, will you answer them?
Yes.
Okay,
sorry, I am going through speaker sweat.
It's okay. We don't want it the other way around. Can you be a good manager as an introverted person?
I don't know.
Sorry?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I think, so just trying to think what I can say here. As an introverted person, if you want to be a good manager, you can still use tools. It's not about just talking all the time. It's about enabling people. It's about, you can tell your team that the way I like to receive feedback or I like to work with you is one-to-one. I'll make sure we have a one-to-one catch-up, and that's my safe space. It's about communicating how you can work with them and being honest about it with them. It's not that you won't have their backing in the public, but I think you can. It's just about understanding what are the skills you can bring in as an introvert for a good manager. Sorry, I'm not really sure if I answered that.
No, I think you answered it quite nicely. Next one. How do you handle burned out engineers as a manager?
Interesting story. Interesting question. Thank you. I actually had an engineer in my team in March. And they're like, oh my God, this release is not working. This is not right. I keep finding defects. They fix one feature, we find another problem. It's just so unstable. And I was like, okay, I hear you. They were getting really anxious. Like you could see they were not smiling. They were talking about having a headache every day. And I said, you need to book the next week off. Yo, but we have this release next. I was like, you need to be well. I need you to be well. Take the week off. I have done it. I just said, I'm sorry, I have a headache. I'm just going to take a nap, and I'll be back in a few hours if you feel better. It's really important to let people know we are humans. It's okay to not feel okay. It really is. And when you're feeling burnt out, they're not bringing value to you anyway. What was upsetting was that even though this person took time off, they started bringing a lot of negative energy into the team. And my heart just broke when I spoke to them and I said to them, I'm really sorry, but I think you need to think about whether you should be working at this time. Maybe you need some time away from work altogether. I was really speaking to them as a person, and I had to let go of them, unfortunately. But I said to them, you should use this opportunity to just unwind, relax. It's important because you can't bring your best self or your whole self to work if you're feeling burnt out.
Time for one more, and I'm selfishly going to ask the one that I want to ask.
Yes.
Which is where's it gone? Oh, it's disappeared. But
it's
it was
been
on
answered.
There. No, it was on there. It was why didn't you fire that aggressive person from your team?
Why didn't I?
Yes.
Because they'd been employed for 2 years.
Okay.
So I didn't fire that aggressive person from the team because I didn't have the data to show they were being aggressive. This is why writing that email was important.
That's why you have to document everything.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful. Everybody, warm round of applause for Maryam.
Thank you.